if you do end up going to conciliation, and the important thing to note is in that previous slide of all the, any point in all of this, you could go to conciliation. So at any point of any of these where you have a claim and it isn't being dealt with, you could go to conciliation, which probably you would want to do, and it should be the last resort, but again, can sort things out quite quickly too. Now again, the dispute resolution procedure under this contract is unique to itself, and it's not like the dispute procedures under the other contracts. So again, you just need to be aware of it. So I won't take you through it in detail. I mean, the conciliation procedure is the same as all conciliation procedures. If a dispute arises, the party with the dispute, the referring party, issues a notice of dispute. It goes through. You have 10 days to agree a conciliation between you. If you don't, then the nominating body will appoint one. So the RAI, the I, whatever stated in the schedule, will appoint the conciliator. The conciliator then, it should really be a less formal process than under the standard contracts, but it's really not. It's the same. Like the conciliator has less sort of specific powers, if you like, than they do under the standard contract. But the reality is they treat them. They treat them in the exact same way. The conciliator has 42 days, same as the standard contract, to resolve agreement between the parties. There's no provision for a recommendation. So, you know, most people arrive to these conciliations and they just assume they're dealing with any old conciliation. They sit there for the day and they think, I'm not going to come to any agreement or anything else. And anyway, they then ask the conciliator to make a recommendation. The conciliator says, no, I have no power to make a recommendation under these contracts. And they don't. That's it. The next step, if it's not resolved within the 42 days of being appointed, you submit to the jurisdiction of the Irish courts. So again, really, it often surprises me. I mean, I finish up the day of conciliation with this contractor, not willing to budge an inch all day and dealing with me, saying, I'll take my recommendation for the conciliation. Oh, so actually you won't, you're going to have to come after me in the High Court. Big shock to the contractor. But that's under these contracts. Again, very, very, very simple. You know it now, it's in front of you. So funnily enough, I always find when they realise that, for some reason, even though I think the Four Courts is a much nicer place to be than an arbitration, and it's a much easier and cheaper place, ironically enough, to be than arbitration, but it seems to scare contractors. So, quite rightly so, probably. It tends to settle when they realise then we're not getting any recommendation from a conciliation. We tend to be able to spend another couple of hours agreeing it between ourselves. But again, just be aware of it because it's different, and it's usually just the people aren't aware of it. Employer may terminate by written notice to contractor if there's a substantial breach or if there's an insolvency event. So in the standard contracts, there's loads of defined breaches, you know, like if you haven't given your insurance, if you haven't proceeded diligently, you know, if you haven't, you know, started on time or anything of that, or health and safety requirements, there's loads of different breaches, whereas in this contract that's all it says, just substantial breach. So again, it's open to a very wide interpretation. And then an insolvency event, which again, it just says insolvency event, but it's the usual insolvency events, receivership, examinership, liquidation, etc. The termination takes effect 10 days after the notice is given. The contractor must leave site and can't remove any goods or materials unless he's instructed to do so. And then the standard, the EOR will give a certificate of termination value, which is the amount of the work completed to date. The employer will go ahead and get others to complete the work. All payments to the contractor are postponed until the works are completed, and after its completion, the EOR will give a certificate of the termination amount to the contractor. So that's the cost of completing the works plus the losses incurred as a result of termination. And if the certified termination amount is less than the certified termination value, obviously there's a balance to the contractor and they get paid within 30 days. And if the opposite is true, the employer must pay the contractor within 10 days, which, as we can all imagine, never happens. And then finally, which is where there is differences, and this seems to cause problems for people, is that's what I've just gone through is your standard default termination situation. The termination at the employer's election does exist in this contract as well, although to a slightly lesser extent than the standard one. But it does just provide, interestingly enough, that if the contractor is terminated and another contractor is appointed within 12 months, then the original contractor is entitled to the unpaid portion of the price as stated in the schedule. So you're entitled, it's effectively like you'll get the whole price of the job as originally stated, now obviously with no adjustments. And then the other thing that causes a problem in this contract is there's no termination at contractor's election under this contract. So the number of people who come to me and say, well, I've suspended the works because they're not paying me, you can't do that under this contract. No contractor's termination under this contract. Under the standard contracts, you can suspend if you're not paid. This one you can't. So again, I just thought since we had the time, I would just highlight it as a sort of another area to watch out. So again, if there is anything arising on termination, again, see if it's a claim. If it is a sort of a claim, if you're being terminated, or if there's anything arising like that, again, watch out for it. I haven't dealt with it as one of the sort of 5 main claim areas because it's not really appropriate. But again, watch it. So if something does arise, is it a claim situation? If it is, make your claim.